you can guarantee that your prospect, they've done their homework. So the salesperson who is not data-driven, who is not tech-savvy, who doesn't take all of that into account before they contact the prospect or customer, they're going to be seen as the weaker link.
Yeah, and it's so important for us to carry this legacy around. Attitude, is so much. It's everything. How many skills are you going to have, but it's that one attitude that you need, and people miss this.
I just don't have time to do that. I'm making too many calls already. Well, would you rather make 10 so-so calls, average calls, or would you rather make 2 or 3 where you're super prepared and you really increase your chance of winning?
Hi guys, my name is Ashish Janiani. Thank you so much for joining me for today's interview. It's my pleasure to be your host today and ask some amazing questions towards amazing guests that we have. If you don't know this man, it's my privilege to actually interview him because of his experience and what he's going to bring to you today. Okay, he's given 4 years or 4 decades of his life just to sales. He's ran Zig Ziglar Corporation for 4 years as the president. And he's been with Sandler trainings for more than 9 years. It's one thing, to be in sales, and it's other thing to run a sales company. And this man has done that and continues to do that with his friendship's amazing. It's my utmost privilege to have this interview with Michael Norton. Take notes and enjoy. Hey, Michael, how are you doing?
I'm very good, Ashish. How are you?
I'm doing great. I want to first, as always, start with your journey. Today, where you are, it started somewhere. Take us back to how you got into sales and how you decided to be in sales all these years.
Yeah, so, for me, sales was one of those things I really lucked into. I happened to be looking for an opportunity early on and found myself being recruited into a selling position, which everybody told me that I was ideally I was built for salesmanship, and I don't know if I should take that as a compliment or not, but I pursued that journey. And as I went through my professional selling journey, I had this whole passion for the sales training piece. The company that I worked for did a really, really good job in bringing all new salespeople through sales training. And I was one of those folks who, if you've been in the classroom before, not a lot of salespeople like to role play. They don't want to put themselves out there and be vulnerable. For me, it was like, put me in every single time. I wanted to role play. I wanted to help with the training, and it just became a passion for me. So early in my career, as I evolved from salesperson to sales manager to VP of sales, also had the title of national sales manager, or national sales trainer rather. So I started really developing the people that were on the team and helping them learn those same sales skills. And along the way, Ashish, that's where I was introduced to guys like Zig Ziglar and Tom Hopkins and Dennis Waitley and all the big names and some of the bigger training companies like a Sandler or Miller Heiman. So I was exposed very early to some great content and concepts, which all it did was further fuel my passion for wanting to help people. And I would fast forward that to, when the dot-com boom happened in the late 1990s, I thought about what I could do and what I could start, that I could give back, that I was truly passionate about, and it was sales training information. So I started a company called salesrepsonline.com, where we aggregated the content from the Zig Ziglars, the Tom Hopkins, the Dennis Waitleys, and the other big training houses. And we chunked that down to just 1 and 2 paragraph insights, micro-learning. Before anybody was really talking about micro-learning, we were already doing micro-learning for salespeople. And we were feeding that up through CRM applications. We were fortunate enough to build and sell that organization, so that was great. And when we did, Mr. Ziglar, who was a partner, asked me to stay on. And now I'm pinching myself because I grew up as an acolyte and a disciple of Zig Ziglar. I had the blessing to be a partner with him. And then he asked me to stay on and become part of his company, which I did, and I eventually became the president of the organization. When Zig retired, I went over to Sandler and became the executive vice president. of the global accounts team. So that's kind of the journey to where I am now that brought me to Tramazing, and we can talk about that if you'd like to.
I want to go back to this one thing. You said, I wanted to be out there. I wanted to learn. How did you get that mindset that I want to keep learning? Because when you know a lot, that's when your performance starts going down. And if you can then speak about Tramazing.
Yeah, so going back to that point, I will share with you that, as I said, one of the early companies that I worked with had a very robust sales training program. And after you completed the program, they actually sent somebody out into the field to work with you. Their title was a national sales trainer, so if they weren't in the classroom, they were going out in the territory and making sales calls. And I'll never forget this gentleman, Ashish. In between every call, he was teaching me all the time. He was giving me these little pearls of wisdom, like, okay, here's what went right in that call. Here's maybe what you might have wanted to try differently. And I was such a sponge. I was like, okay, let's do it again. Let's practice that one more time. And, like anything else, if you get good at it, you want to get better. So you just keep evolving that skill. You keep sharpening the saw, right? For whatever reason, as soon as I saw that was my fastest path to success, was to emulate what that gentleman was teaching me. How can I emulate it myself and then bring it to other people?
Wow. And then how did you bring up Tramazing? Where was it born from out of all these years?
So Tramazing is training made amazing. That's where the two words came together. But what we wanted to do in my prior company, salesrepsonline.com, and I did have another one in there called candogo.com, where we aggregated content. I didn't want to just aggregate content this time. What I wanted to do, and the gap that I saw, was that organizations know that they want to build their people. They know they want to build a better organization. Many of them have great relationships, and they know they can turn to any one of the training companies that they've used in the past and where they've had success. But so often in my career, I found myself or one of my salespeople sitting across from somebody in either a senior sales role or even a CEO role, possibly the chief learning officer or director of training and development. And they knew they needed to do something, but they didn't know where to start. They also didn't know how much they should budget. Like, what's a realistic number, either on a project basis or a per person basis. So the gap that we wanted to fill, the solution that we wanted to provide, was being that source, being a resource to say, okay, tell me the KPIs that you're trying to improve. Tell me what you've tried in the past. What's the culture of your organization? When it comes to technology, or is this a sales culture? Is this an ops culture? And really getting our head around what they've done and where they want to go. And more often than not, we can say to them, you're either being unrealistic with your budget. It's going to cost you a little more than you think. It's going to take longer than you think. It's probably going to be harder than you think. But giving them a realistic view of what a true corporate sales training program should look like and how they can maximize the benefits if they go down that path. So that's where Tramazing was born, is how do we help companies find the right training organizations and the right sales enabling technologies and look at it holistically to say, here's the best thing you can do to serve you and your people, who in turn will serve your customers.
Wow. Okay. All right. Now, I'm going to put across this as I don't know if it's a difficult question for you or not, but I think buyers are struggling now to be able to buy because of the options that we have. So I came across challenging customer recently, and I was like, all right, this is true. So the process on the sales side has changed, but it's changed a lot on the buying side. You've seen sales change. Okay, and Tramazing is an example of why you created this company. Can you take us back to how sales was and how it has changed now, and also things that have not changed? And if you can then lead this somewhere with an example of your time with Zig, you've got, you've been with him behind the scenes, and I think, people deserve to know one chat that you've had with him that's impacted.
Yeah, I'm happy to wrap it up with that thought, because the guy certainly has changed 250 million lives and counting. So I'll share a good one with you there. So when you think back to sales, a lot of companies, even Sandler today, they talk about the Sandler selling system, which is so powerful. And people will talk about okay, what do you have to do on the front end of a sales call? And you would see things that would have, a 4-step process, a 5-step process, a 9-step process. They were very linear. And said, if you follow this process, if you stay in this system, and this is very much, probably in the 80s, it really came to light to be like, this is the way that salespeople are selling. And it was awesome because it gave us all a roadmap to think about and to follow. And David Sandler, I'll give him tons of credit because he was so far ahead of his time. And that'll bring me to where we are today. He talked about this, what he called back in the day, the buyer-seller dance. You're either in the buyer's system and process or you're in the seller's system and process. And he would talk about where they collide and where they should come together. So that's how he built his whole system. So today, everybody's talking about the fact that the statistics are somewhere close, and people say 64% to as high as 72 or 73% of the buying decision has already been made, or the information's already been able to be gathered by the buyer before they even meet with the salesperson. It doesn't mean that they don't need to meet with the salesperson. It just means they have more access to information today that helps them make a better decision. Is it too much information? Maybe, because they really need that expertise from the salesperson or subject matter expert to make sure that they're getting the right solution, right? Whether they're trying to solve a problem, alleviate pain, or achieve a goal. Maybe there's something new that they're striving for, and they need to achieve that goal. And so where the biggest difference is from salespeople just going out and being taught scripts and following a process to now being more sensitive to the fact that there's a buying journey going on, the decisioning process. Even now, the last 14 months, we've heard over and over again how more influencers and more decision makers are involved in big purchases than just somebody who's running a department or maybe had a singular budget. So the salesperson today has to be super savvy and know their business, know their customer, know their competition when they're going in, because you can guarantee that your prospect or your customer who you're maybe looking to expand value or upsell, that opportunity, they've done their homework. So the salesperson who is not data driven, who is not tech savvy, who doesn't take all of that into account before they contact the prospect or customer, they're going to be seen as the weaker link. And here's the analogy I use, Ashish, with this, because having been around this industry for so long, there are so many great trainers and so many great programs out there that if the salespeople would just follow them, and if the sales managers would coach their people to whatever system it is that they're using, because that's the other question we get: what's the best sales training program? The one that your salespeople are going to use, right? And your manager are going to coach to. That's the best training program that's out there. But where it falls down, and in the past, people would not do the pre-call planning. They wouldn't take the time to do a pre-brief with their manager or even a peer to make sure somebody else is looking at what they're about to, the conversation they're going to have, the questions they should ask, maybe some concerns or objections that might come up. How do you get ahead of that? And salespeople will tell you today, well, I just don't have time. I just don't have time to do that. I'm making too many calls already. Well, would you rather make 10, so-so calls, average calls, or would you rather make 2 or 3 where you're super prepared and you really increase your chance of winning? So that pre-brief and that pre-call plan becomes so much more important today because of the knowledge that the buyer has and the decisioning process that they're going to go through.
So, can you give an example about how the phone has changed now? In fact, this just happened yesterday. I was using Sales Navigator, and I like to make cold calls. It makes me feel productive, right? As if I'm doing something important. We started using Navigator recently, and I was like, let me try this approach. It took me 2 hours to send 13 messages, which were customized, because I went through the company profile, I went through if they were growing the sales team, how the year was, and I was customizing the messages. But I felt more confident about this process because of what you just said. But I think we are still confused out there. A lot of salespeople. how has the phone changed? Where does the phone come into play? When do you make a call? Is the cold call still really, the good way to go? And I'm talking about B2B.
Yeah, 100%. The phone is still a fantastic way to go. We're going through the same thing. Here's the fun thing, Ashish. I love to get on cold calls too. I love to have my list, and it just fires me up to be able to talk to somebody, or attempt to talk to somebody. But here's what salespeople should be thinking about. A lot of us aren't traveling anymore. It's just there's been bans on travel, so we have to get really good at what we're doing right now. But any daily cookbook should include a number of calls that you're definitely going to make. What's the minimum number of times I'm going to pick up the telephone and call somebody? What are the minimum number of emails I'm going to send to somebody today? I don't care if it's an introductory email, a follow-up email, how's your grandmother email? I'm going to send out 15 to 25 emails today. How many text messages? I have cell phone numbers for CEOs, VPs of sales, chief learning officers in my phone. How many texts will I send today as a way to just stay in touch and stay connected and see if I can get on the calendar? LinkedIn, how many new connections will I seek today that are good connections? Not just, you don't want to have 10,000 connections because there are just 10,000 names in your LinkedIn, but who are relevant people that I either want to follow because I can learn from them, somebody who's flies in the same circle as me, but we don't compete, but we call on the same customer, how can I connect with them? And then who are prospects and customers? So what am I doing as far as my LinkedIn connection? But then the other side of that is, what am I doing to what you just said, LinkedIn Navigator? 13 messages, 15 messages, whatever that minimum number of activity is. So now you look at the end of the day and you say, your barometer, your success factors, how many, did I make those calls I said I was going to make? Did I send the emails? Did I send the text messages? How many connections did I make? And how many LinkedIn emails did I send out, right? The last piece for any sales people, and I love having this argument in the classroom. We used to be in the classroom with folks. Salespeople who've been around a really long time, B2B salespeople, even selling big enterprise opportunities, they don't think they need to ask for referrals anymore. Well, that's very short-sighted. Every single call needs to end, or every email exchange back and forth. Hey, I know, right now everything's going good, but I just thought there's probably somebody you're working with that you think I should maybe talk to. Every call, every text, every email, you should never stop asking for referrals.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you two more questions and come to Zig, the summary. And one of the questions is on your book. The Ifications Selling. That's the book, right? I like the title. If you can highlight, the reason behind you writing this book after all these years, and who should pick that up. And my other question was more geared towards retention, of the importance of retention in sales, because what happens is when we close an account, the mind kind of still wants to close more accounts, and in a lot of places the service is not as good as it should be, right? So what is the importance of retention in sales? I think that's the easier way to sell, but you're a better judge. So if you can give an example, talk about the book, and then we can summarize with Zig.
All right, so the retention piece. If you're in sales, some companies, some organizations have people who are focused on hunting and net new business, like how do I go get net new logos, and then they may have account managers who are responsible for that retention. But if you think about as a sales leader, CEO, or a business owner, I like to put them in three buckets. It's net new logos are absolutely important, right? Account management is important, and especially since a lot of them are focused on upselling or expanding that business within that account. But your point is really well taken, that retention, and instead of saying retention, I like to say protection. People will say maintain. Maintain. Nobody wants to be maintained. Do you want to be maintained? I don't want to be maintained. Maintain is like, what? Maintained? I don't know. Just oil me every once in a while, do a quick checkup and make sure I'm okay. No, you want to be protected. If you're my salesperson, Ashish, and I'm your account, I want you to protect me. I want you to give me all the information that's available out there so that I can do my job, because you're my subject matter expert.
Yeah, that's so true. I think it's such an important point. I want people to like kind of go back and listen to this. We miss as salespeople this whole retention game. It's so much easier to sell to the same customer.
It's by far the best customer is the existing customer.
Yeah, right. So let's talk about the book.
Yeah, because that leads into the Ifications and why I wrote it. I wanted to have fun with it, and if you read it, you'll notice I was just having some fun with it. It's not designed to be a sales training process, because there's so many companies who do such a phenomenal job with that. What it's meant to do is sit in between each phase of a sales process. And where it was born from, Ashish, was that I used to draw on whiteboards or on a notebook paper, or even flying on airplanes. If I found myself sitting next to a salesperson or a sales leader, I would draw 4 circles. And I would say, initiate, qualify, present, or close. And I would ask the question. So if I had to ask you, what's the most important one out of those 4, what would you say? And some, people trying to be funny would say, well, it's all of them. We need help in every single area. Like, no, but if you really had to pick one, that if you can improve it just a little bit, what would it be? And invariably, it would always come down to qualification. If we could really get good at where we should spend our time. And even though qualification is built into every single sales methodology and process out there, common sense is not always common practice. How do we say, okay, here's the who, what, where, when, why, how kind of questions that we need to ask. But if we don't ask them, it doesn't do us any good. So the Ifications was, hey, we're going to think about qualification, ends in ification. And if we're going to talk about value, that's quantification. Well, there's another ification. If we're going to talk about verification, specifications, modifications to, and it's not just modifications or specifications when you're talking about a complex sale. It's modifications to our behaviors, modifications to our attitude, specifications, being really specific on what happens after you deliver a proposal. What happens next? What are the clear next steps? So the Ifications takes just a different look at all the words that end in ification. And the biggest one that we found in there, the one that folks are talking about the most, is what I lead it off with. And that's the amplification. And this will tie really well to the Zig Ziglar, as we wrap it up. Amplification. Amplification is not just becoming loud, being a bully to your prospects or your customers. Amplification is, how do we elevate our game? How do we maximize our will and our skill, our passion, our purpose, our performance, right? How do we take 1 + 1 = not just 3? That's when you combine will and skill. But if you amplify will and skill, now you're talking about 1 + 1 = 5. What am I going to do every single day from a behavioral standpoint? What do I have to do to make sure my attitude is in check? What am I going to do to make sure that I am giving my customers, my fellow teammates, everybody, all that I have today? That wow moment, right? Every single day, just amplify all that we do. And I'll circle all the way back to what you said earlier. How do we amplify our learning, the continuous learning journey? Because the world is going to change, technology is going to change, we're going to have new apps, we're going to have access to new data and information. How do we capture that? And the way we do it is through amplification of our skills.
Okay, and any behind the scenes stuff with Zig, that you can take us back to?
So a couple. I'll give you a couple, because having been around this Ashish now, you've interviewed a whole lot of people. You've read a lot of books. You're a student of the game yourself, which I give you lots of kudos yourself for doing that. But I've also met lots of authors and speakers. And even trainers. Some people are one way on the stage and one way in their book, and then they're a different type of person in life. And it's sometimes it's very different and very easy to tell. Zig was the exact same person on the stage, off the stage, and he was the genuine article. He would never. What I love most about traveling with him was he was always teaching. And if he wasn't teaching, the way you saw him interact with somebody in a restaurant or on an airplane, going through security at an airport, the guy was always teaching. There was nobody more consistent in his belief system than he was. His consistency is what made him truly amazing. And here's my favorite Zig story. It was born out of one of his stories that he told. And I don't know how familiar you are with all of his works, but do you remember there was a story where he was stuck in the airport? It was in Kansas City, and he had been traveling all week, and he had been doing some recording. He was really looking forward to getting home. And he got to the airport, and there was a big line to check in. And when he finally got up there, he was told, "Mr. Ziglar, we're very sorry, your flight has been delayed by 3 or 4 hours. As a matter of fact, we're not even sure it's going to leave today." And without missing a beat, he said, "That is fantastic." And the guy says, "Mr. Ziglar, I don't think you heard me." He goes, "Your flight is 3 or 4 hours delayed. And as a matter of fact, we don't know. It may not even go out today." And Zig said, "That is just fantastic." And he meant it. And so he said, "So tell me, why is it fantastic?" And Zig said, "Well, A, there could be a problem with the airplane that you're trying to fix that you know about and I don't know about. I don't want to be up there with a bad airplane. B, there could be weather up there that you can see on your radar that it's just not safe to fly in. And certainly I don't want to be up there if it's bad and super bumpy. And lastly, look at all these people around here. There's 5,000 new friends I can meet. This place is air conditioned. I can sit and read my book and take notes. This is going to be the best few hours that I could possibly make." It is fantastic. The whole demeanor, everybody around him, the demeanor of the people across the counter, everything changed. But here's where it comes full circle, Ashish. And this is for anybody, not just salespeople. So I'm the president of the company. And we would get letters, cards, emails, faxes, and we kept everyone. Zig's personal assistant, Lori Majors, kept every one of them. So I'm sitting at my desk, and she brings me in a letter. And it's from a woman, her name was Joy Clausen, or is Joy Clausen, now Joy Clausen Soto, S-O-T-O. And I'm reading this letter from this young woman, telling me her own fantastic story. And if I could please share it with Mr. Ziglar. Well, here's the story. She was just getting out of college, or she was taking a break from college. She was reached up onto her neck, she had a cough, and also she felt a lump that was never there before. She went through a series of tests to find out that it was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It was a very, very serious ordeal. And now, by this time, she was a dolphin trainer at SeaWorld. She got her undergraduate degree. She was going for her postgraduate degree. And when the doctors brought her family in and sat her down to tell her what was going on, she looked at them and said, "This is fantastic." Because her dad used to listen to Zig all the time, so she was stuck listening to these stories in her car all the time. That's how she knew the story. So they looked at her like she was crazy. She said, "No, this is fantastic." And they're like, "Why is this fantastic?" She goes, "Well, I got my undergraduate from this university. I'm working on my postmaster's degree. I am a dolphin trainer at SeaWorld, and I am a cancer survivor. I'm going to beat this thing. This is fantastic." And she did. And they made a movie. She's made a documentary about it. She went on to become a filmmaker. Her book just came out last week. She's alive. She's beat this thing, but she claimed the victory. Her positive attitude, and physician after physician have told her it was because of her fight, because of her attitude. So Zig is known as the salesman's salesman, right? He is known as maybe one of the greatest motivators of all time. But this was a true real-world story that somebody took his teachings and applied it and is now just flourishing in every area of her life. So when she sent the letter, I called her and I said, "Joy, I am not telling Mr. Ziglar your story." And she was like, "What?" I said, "No, you're going to tell him. As a matter of fact, we're going to put you on an airplane. I'm flying you out here because you're going to stand in front of our company and you're going to tell your story." And she did. And then when Zig turned 80, we had this big birthday party and we flew her out again because she's probably the best ambassador of the current day that says you can do anything in this world if you really put your mind behind it. And I think that's what salespeople miss sometimes. They get so focused on the behavior or so focused on the skill. It's that mentality where we have to keep our healthy self-image, our positive attitude. Because we're going to get told no more than we're going to get told yes, right? You've lived through this. Every salesperson that might listen to this knows what it means to keep your head in the game and stay motivated.
You know what you just said, it gave me goosebumps. I miss the guy, I miss his legacy. I'm sure if he were around, and it's so important for us to carry this legacy. Attitude, is so much. It's everything. How many skills are you gonna have? But it's that one attitude that you need, and people miss this. Yeah, you just gave me a birthday gift. It means a lot. Thank you so much. It really, really means a lot to what you just said. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. All right, I'll speak to you.
Bye-bye.